listening, we want you to fund our education, not hate speech. We want you to fund science, not fairy tales. We want comprehensive, scientifically and medically accurate sex education. You cannot teach us about sex by telling us not to have it. Why do people think that educating us is harmful? Neil deGrasse Tyson says, "The good thing about science, it is true, whether or not you believe in it." Humans are the main reason for climate change. Bringing a snowball to the Senate floor during winter does not disprove climate change. We cannot work on the solutions to our problems until we agree on the facts. The scientific method is the best method we have. Once you try bringing the supernatural into the equation, it is no longer science. Carl Sagan once said, "I don't want to believe, I want to know." We want to get our science information from scientists. We do not want your agenda. We do not want your politics. We do not want your beliefs. We want unadulterated science. We need science from our scientists, not silence. I like to quote my friend Bill Nye the Science Guy. Science is the key to the future. And if you do not believe in science, then you're holding everyone else back. The oceans are rising, and so shall we. Welcome to the resistance!
Also, if you visit the March for Science tent right here, they have postcards you can fill out which will be sent to your local politicians. We must stand up for science and not fairy tales. Our next speaker is from the Phil Ferguson Show. We have Phil Ferguson himself. Give him a round of applause.
Jim asked when I would want to talk, and I said, I'll talk anytime as long as it's not right after Kelly. So thanks for that, Jim. I appreciate that very much. The other sad news is I have to start off by acknowledging that I agree with Ken Ham. Yes, it's true. I'm going to paraphrase something he said. If you don't believe in a literal Adam and Eve, there is no need for Jesus, and all of Christianity is bullshit. I agree with Ken Ham. Just to let you know, about 8 years ago, I had an idea, and with the help from the Secular Student Alliance, which you're very privileged to have just up the street in Columbus, Ohio, me and 300 friends went and visited the Creation Museum. The Museum of Lies. And in many cases, Ken Ham doesn't understand the use of the English language. Maybe it's because he's a foreigner. But he doesn't understand what a museum is. And this museum does not teach the truth. It does not teach facts. It does not teach reality. It teaches lies. It teaches creation science and biblical history. The problem the Creation Museum, however, faces is that once you go and you find out that God did it, why go back? Because God's still done it. So to draw more attention, what they've done is they've turned it into a giant amusement park. They have a petting zoo. They have zip lines. They have a planetarium that can take you anywhere in the universe, whatever that's supposed to mean. They have a program to teach you about the Christmas star, the light that led the wise men to Jesus. They have, of course, a cafe and a bookstore. They've added a Christmas town, which now for growing parts of the year has gardens of light. They have botanical gardens, and they have a place where you can find gemstones in a bag of sand that you pay $10 for. It's called the Cedarville University Mining Company Sluice. So you can basically pan for gemstones, and they just have this brand new, I just saw it on the website, I was so excited. They now have an overnight adventure where you can get locked in overnight with Ken Ham. Right?
And in case you didn't know, in the Creation Museum, the original Adam in the Garden of Eden was modeled off an actual porn star. Did you guys know that? It's true, I tell you, it's true. They had to take that model out and find a new volunteer to model Adam after. So I've been fighting Ken Ham off and on for 8 years, and of course I was here last year, and now I want to tell you a little bit about the Ark that has been built exactly like the way a 700-year-old man and his 3 sons would do it. First of all, Ken Ham started this construction before he had all of the funds in place, which is actually in violation of the Bible. And let me quote, because it's so important for us to quote the Bible. "Don't begin until you count the cost. For who would begin construction of a building without first calculating the cost to see if there is enough money to finish it?" Luke 14:28. Ken Ham is violating his own precious book. This amusement park, the Ark Amusement Park, cost over $100 million to build. $62 million came from a floating of junk bonds that were underwritten by the city of Williamstown, and they are repaid in part by the property taxes that the Ark is not paying. So the Ark, instead of paying property taxes, pays the money back to the bonds that allowed them to build a $100 million structure, which they get to keep. So the citizens are buying a $100 million building for Ken Ham. They also sold 98 acres to Ken Ham for $1. You and I can't buy 98 acres of land right off of an interstate for $1. There was an additional $36 million made by investors to get this thing done. And of course, the original plan was to make the Ark 100% out of gopher wood. They couldn't find any gopher wood, so they had to use other types of wood. The original plan, the Ark would be all wood. However, every architect they contracted, they hired to draw this up, said you can't do something that big only out of wood. It won't hold its own weight. So instead, they had to use cranes. They had to use earth-moving equipment. They had 1,000 workers, not an old man and his 3 sons, 1,000 workers. And on his blog, Ken Ham boasted that they are using space-age technology to precisely locate the concrete and rebar foundation columns. There's almost 60 of them. And there's 3 additional buildings that the Ark is attached to. It is not a boat. It is a giant building with a lot of wood in it. They use 20 different types of cranes, and the 3 main towers have concrete foundations that go below the earth 10, 15 feet. They use 95 tons of metal, plates, and bolts to hold the wood together. This is not something Noah and his sons would do. The giant timbers that they used from entire trees had to be machine cut to fit together because humans would take too long to do it. And of course the building has electrical, plumbing, aluminum framing for individual rooms, air conditioning, and the fire marshal required them to put in a 50,000-gallon retaining pond in front of the Ark because they were concerned that if it ever caught on fire, the city would never be able to put it out. That's why there's a lake. That wasn't original. The building is built on lies. Every step is lies, but yet in their promotional videos, they'll talk about it being the largest wooden structure in the world. Maybe that's true, but it's wood built on concrete, on steel. And if you need to lie for your God to support his biblical text, then you have an impotent God. If your God requires you to lie for him, you have a weak God. And of course, Ken Ham and his devotees, you've probably heard it many times. If you talk to them, they will ask you, "Were you there?" Have you heard this? I have a suggestion for you. When they ask, "Were you there?" my response is, "Yes, I was." And you weren't, because I was there and I did not see you. And it did not happen the way you're describing it. They will then suddenly, spontaneously try to argue rationally that you were not there, and they are relying on scientific fact and not the Bible. It is great comedy fun. Enjoy that. That's fun. Because all of their arguments, all of what they say essentially boils down to verbal masturbation. At best, it is that. At worst, it is delusional and dangerous lies that poison the minds of our children. The fight will continue, and I wait for the day that the Ark will stand as a monument to the ignorance of humanity and will be converted into luxury condominiums. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Charles Fox. He's a professor at the University of Kentucky. He's going to talk to us about some actual science. Give it up for Charles Fox.
Wow, this is a great opportunity to come talk to you today. As Jim said, I'm from the University of Kentucky, where I'm an evolutionary biologist. And because we're here protesting one organization that is misinforming the public, I thought we should start by acknowledging that there are a tremendous number of organizations in the state of Kentucky that are not misinforming the public. The state funds 8 major universities, and there are a tremendous number of private colleges throughout the state that are educating students in rational thought and sort of how to do real-world problem solving. One thing these universities have in common is they have science departments. The University of Kentucky in particular has at least 5 colleges that are dominated by science departments, and science is scattered throughout many other areas of the university. And this is true for all of the colleges and universities that are in the state of Kentucky. And the reason they have science departments is because science has turned out to be the most successful way of answering problems, solving problems, answering big questions about the way the world works. Now, if you've taken a science course, you've been exposed to lots of discussion about how science works. Terms like hypotheses and theory and the role of Karl Popper's ideas and so on. And I'm not going to talk about that today, but I do want to emphasize one key point that I think is tremendously important, and that is that science is about ideas being tested by evidence. And when our ideas about how the world works are not supported by evidence, those ideas need to change. Sometimes they're rejected, sometimes they're just revised, and then they're retested with evidence. And this continues just constantly. It's what scientists do. It's how we get to a better understanding about the world. And unfortunately, that testing of ideas with evidence and requiring that ideas be supported by evidence is what is get lost in much of society. This is one of the reasons I really dislike the Ark Park and its companion museum. They're doing 2 things that I think are really problematic for society. One is they're making our public more scientifically illiterate. They're teaching things that we know are not true. Evolutionary biology is a huge field of biology. It's not this little side thing that a few people do. It's a gigantic subject that tremendous numbers of people work on. We have a very good understanding about how evolution works. We have a very good understanding of the history of life on Earth. There are many controversies, of course, but those controversies are often about details and specific problems. They're not about the big picture issues that we all agree on. But the much more problematic, well, the much bigger problem, I think, with the Ark Park is that they're undermining confidence in society, confidence in science. Confidence in science is tremendously important because, as I said, science is the best way we have to solve many kinds of problems. The Ark Park here is teaching people that science is wrong, that science is unnecessary, that scientists can't be trusted. None of those things are true. Science, of course, makes many mistakes, but it's a self-correcting process. So science itself really can't be wrong. It can be wrong temporarily, but eventually we're going to get to the right point. And they're teaching people that this is just not true, that we need to discard science in favor of other ways of learning about the world. I think those lessons are really, really destructive. Unfortunately, that perspective is very common throughout society. We see this in our federal government. We see this in state government. Policy is not always based on evidence. People are willing to dismiss evidence when it doesn't support their personal values, their religious view of the world, their cultural view of the world, and so on. And I think that entirely stems from people not understanding science, or if they do understanding science, not valuing it as much as they should. And again, I think the Ark Park, I think the Companion Museum up north, those are contributing tremendously to this problem by convincing people that science is not something that can be trusted and is not the best way to learn about the world and solving problems in the world. But let me end on at least one positive note. Despite organizations like the Ark Park and its Companion Museum, there is a tremendous amount of science being done in this world, including a tremendous amount being done here in Kentucky. We know that students are entering STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math at much higher rates than ever in the past. Most universities are dominated by STEM programs. At the PhD level, about 50% of degrees are awarded in one of the STEM fields. So there's a tremendous number of people going into science. And despite the attempts of the Ark here to undermine science literacy, to undermine confidence in science, science is progressing, is going to continue to be providing solutions to problems, and is going to continue to help us understand this fantastic world around us. So thank you very much.
I want to say it took courage for Charles Fox to come up here. It is hard to get a scientist to speak out against the Ark Encounter, because Ken Ham goes after them and tries to get them fired on occasion, or tries to defund their programs. We need more science to speak out, so I want to give Charles one more big round of applause. If you don't think the Ark Encounter should get $18 million in sales tax incentives while discriminating, there is a petition at the Louisville Freethinkers tent. Make sure you visit them before the end of the day. Our next speaker is John Loftus, author, former pastor, and just an amazing individual. Give him a big round of applause.
You know, it's a real sad day when a scientist has to come out and say, hey, Ken Ham, even though he's got this stupid Ark Encounter located in my state, he doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for scientists. He doesn't speak for the universities in Kentucky. Nice job. Nice job. Give him another round of applause. See, because Ken Ham believes in a God who doesn't know anything about science. He's the creator of the universe, get this, who doesn't know anything about the universe. So it's Ken Ham versus science. And to side with Ken Ham is to be basically raised to believe somehow in some fundamentalist Christian home that Ken Ham is right. And we're calling that bullshit today. Bullshit. This is a shrine to Ken Ham's stupidity. The Ark Encounter is a shrine to stupidity, because if you believe the flood tales, then the earth is flat. The earth isn't flat, so you shouldn't believe the flood tales. In fact, if you believe the flood tales, I have no better word to describe except you're stupid. You're stupid. I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anybody, but that's the best word. I thought of using the word madness, idiocy, lunacy, ignorance, or even informationally challenged people, which are all true as well, but I landed on the term stupidity. Stupid. No educated person in the modern world thinks Noah's Ark story is true. And one of the reasons I want to tell you today is because if you think it's true, then the earth is flat. So I want you to help me with, if you would. I want you all to yell out, if you would, stupid. Stupid. You're good. One more time, louder. Stupid. What is Ken Ham? Stupid. What are those? What do you describe those who approved and supported this shrine? Stupid. What about the people who could have stopped it but didn't? Stupid. What about the people who continue voting for the elected officials who approved this shrine? Thank you so much, by the way. If you don't like the word stupid, you could use ignorance or informational challenge, but I think that would be a little bit harder to stick in there because I'm not giving you enough time to do that. What do you call people who have failed to realize that this is a for-profit enterprise? Stupid. What? Stupid. What? Stupid. What do you call people who rejected the separation of church and state and did it anyway? Stupid. What do you call people who didn't realize that only Christians would be hired there? Again, this is a shrine to stupidity. And one of the reasons is because if you believe the tales that are told inside the ark, then you must believe in the flat earth as well. Think of this way. The creation story, Genesis 1, has the universe created after the earth. First the earth was created, then the earth, or then the universe of stars, the sun, moon, and stars. What do you call that? If you believe that God knew nothing about science, not at all, even though he supposedly is the creator of it all. The ancient Hebrews imagined the world as flat and covered by the great solid dome of the firmament, which was held up by mountain pillars. The blue color of the sky was attributed to the chaotic waters that the firmament separated from the earth. The earth was thus surrounded by waters above and below. That's what the Bible teaches. The firmament was thought to be substantial. It had pillars that supported it from the earth and foundations. When the windows of it were opened, rain fell. That's what happened, of course, in the story of the flood, that the windows of heaven opened and like God up there and his angels were just, oh, give me another bucket. Let's throw some more down on him. It was an abode of the birds. See, the birds flew next to the stars, according to the Bible. You can look at that in Genesis 1:20 and Deuteronomy 4:17, because I'm pretty sure you want to look that up. And within the earth, there was the grave. The grave was located where? Down there. That's where you go when you die, down there. So based on these facts, the literal theory has no basis to stand on. Even some Christian scholars are saying something like this. A young earth could never have borne the vegetative mass necessary to create the deposits of coal. And again, there are 600 meters of stratification in the Yellowstone Park, which reveal 18 forests which were covered over by lava one after another, each successive layer which engulfed its predecessor, and there was not enough time in a young earth for that to take place. Now, some Ken Ham supporters would say, well, God can do anything. God could have done all this, even though it's impossible according to science. Well, then what they don't think of is what other things God could do. If he's upset with the earth and he wants to destroy a certain amount of people, then what he could have done, what a smart God could have done, was simply reduce their mating cycles. And over a generation of time, not enough babies are being born to the evil people, so that after a generation or maybe two, then all of a sudden all the people are gone, and all you have are the 8, good, righteous people plus their children. Well, what if the answer goes like this? Well, no, God wanted a sign. He wanted to make a big show of his power. Well, a sign isn't a sign unless there's evidence for it. This is not a sign to God. This is a sign to... Thanks for helping me out. I probably should have clued you in on about that. All right, let me just read to you the Bible. It's Bible lesson time. Those of you who brought your Bibles, I want you to turn to Job chapter 22, verse 14. These are my preacher days, hold your Bible. I would do this. I would say, hold your Bibles up, just to get them in their hands to make sure that they have them. Job 22, 14. Listen to this. Thick clouds veil him, so he does not see us as he walks about the vault of heaven. Again, Job 22, 14. Thick clouds veil him, so he does not see us as he walks about the vault of heaven. God was hiding himself from view. He didn't want to see him. What was he doing? Well, he's allowing the clouds to hide him so that he could walk upon the vault of the heaven above. That's the kind of universe that Ken Ham has to believe in. Another one, Job chapter 37, verse 18. Can you join him in spreading out the skies hard as a mirror of cast bronze? See, the skies, according to the Bible, were cast bronze. That's called the firmament. That's where the sun, moon, and stars were swinging back and forth, and where the rain was held back. Then in Daniel chapter 4, verse 11, in a dream, we read that the tree that he was dreaming about grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Now, about that passage is that there's no possible way a tree could touch the sky. It's saying that there's something up there that it can be touched. And it says, if you were up that high, you could see the ends of the earth. That bespeaks of a flat earth. And I'm going to skip to a good one. I'm sorry. I see the timekeeper coming. In Isaiah 24, verse 1, it says, the earth is turned upside down to scatter its inhabitants. Now, that's, of course, God is upset with them, right? What does he do when he's upset? He turns the earth upside down and scatters its inhabitants. That's a flat earth. When Jesus comes back, he's supposed to be seen by everybody as a flat earth. When he was on the pinnacle of the temple, he could see all the kingdoms of the world. Well, you can't do that if there's a round earth. If you believe the flood tale, then you must believe the flat earth. And anybody who believes the flat earth is... So anybody who believes the flood story is... Thank you.
We've heard a few people talk Ken Ham and the Ark and why they're opposed, but we're going to take a different angle from this. And when it comes to women's health care, there's nobody I can think in the entire country doing more than Planned Parenthood. The fight for women's rights is under attack in Kentucky, and I don't see anybody that I know that is doing more than Lauren Blauvelt-Coplin with Planned Parenthood.
All right, how's everybody doing today? Are you ready to fight hypocrisy? Say, woo! Who's here ready to fight hypocrisy? All right. Now, I'll be honest, at Planned Parenthood in the last 6 years that I've been working here, I have gotten a little too used to political and governmental hypocrisy. And I just want to remind everyone, as we are here in Kentucky, that Senator Mitch McConnell is working day and night to deny 20 million people health care. Because when they get together, they can do whatever they want. And what they want is to deny people life-saving cancer screenings. They want to deny people mental health care. They want the opioid crisis that's happening in Kentucky and Ohio to continue to escalate and get worse. They don't have any solutions, but there isn't enough money to keep the one program that's helping, and that's Medicaid. But decisions are made by those who show up. And unfortunately for us, the people who have shown up think that a half vote is what's necessary. That's what's going to help us all, you know, with the struggles and the issues that we have in our lives. Because this was collaboration at its best. Different levels of government, local and the state working together to make sure that there would be enough money to have what we're going to go see when we go 2 by 2, which I'm very excited for. So if decisions are made by those who show up, we have to make sure that we are the ones who show up. And I'm very proud to see all of you today. Who is proud to be here today to fight the Ark Encounter? Who here today is going to continue to fight to stand up for Medicaid? Absolutely, because you know what? Atheists show up. People of conscience, people of compassion, people who actually care about their neighbors and about their family and who are willing to do something about it. We show up, and we're going to continue to show up. Who's going to be voting in the 2017 election? Who's going to be voting in the primaries? Who's going to be voting in 2018 and 2019 and 2020? Absolutely. So please, work with me. Voting is so important. Local elections matter. These people get to decide how our money is used. And this is what they were able to come up with. Not health care, not more money for schools, not more money to protect the environment. This just like half vote monstrosity. I refuse to call it an arc because it really is just like a facade. But we deserve more. We need more. People in Kentucky especially, we need more. So we have to get involved, not only in voting, but we've got to work for candidates that we trust. And if there isn't a candidate on the ballot that you trust, because, you know, do the research. You know, we like information, we like research. And, you know, judges, some elected officials, they don't have, you know, a letter next to their name. And you may not be able to rely on a party to be standing up for your values. So you need to find out what your candidates stand for, and you know a great test is like, how do they feel about the Ark? How do they feel about Medicaid expansion? Do they support Planned Parenthood? Do they want more money for public schools? And if there isn't a candidate on the ballot who supports your values, I really can strongly urge you to become that candidate on the ballot. We will support you. Look, this is our canvassing team. This is our phone banking team. These are the people that are going to show up because atheists show up. I have a chant for us I hope that you'll join me. I hope that you'll be really loud. Some of you may have heard it before and you may notice the difference. So repeat after me. I know. I know that. I know that we. I know that we can win. 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 Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you coming out. This is an awesome night, awesome day to spend together.
Make sure you visit Planned Parenthood and get your free sign when you march on the Ark 2x2. Also, you can sign up to be a volunteer at Planned Parenthood, and they have scripts that you can use to call your local legislators to tell them to support Planned Parenthood and health care for all. Our next speaker is Ed Hensley. He's the president of the Louisville Freethinkers and Atheists. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Due to time constraints, I decided to reverse the order of everything I'm going to say. First thing, I'm going to tell you about the Kentucky Free Thought Convention. Go to kyfreethoughtconvention.org. It is September 2nd in Louisville on the entire 6th floor of the Muhammad Ali Center. We got Seth Andrews from the Thinking Atheist podcast. We've got Matt Dillahunty from the Atheist Experience TV show and podcast, and a great lineup. It'll be a great time. That's Saturday, September 2nd. Some other meetups in Louisville. First of all, there's a State Fair booth, August 17th through 27th. Come by our booth. You can learn more about that over at our tent. July 24th, we have the League of Women Voters visiting us to tell us about their issues. They probably align a little bit with Planned Parenthood, so be sure and look for that meetup. August 14th, the Freedom From Foundation Student of Color Essay Contest winner, Lydia Mason, who is recently featured on Free Thought Today podcast, is going to be our guest speaker. That's Lydia Mason, the Student of Color Essay Contest winner with the Freedom From Religion Foundation. Last of all, listen to Blasphemy in the Bluegrass podcast. And some of you here, I learned, live in District 9 in Indiana. The man who brought gay marriage all the way to the Supreme Court and won, Dan Cannon, is running for Congress in District 9 in Indiana. I can't say to vote for him because I represent too many 501c3 groups, but I think you know what to do if you go to the polls and you see his name on the ballot. Okay. The biggest question that I get asked is, why aren't we suing over that? Why aren't we suing over the abortion clinic accesses and all the rules and regulations and executive orders? There are people that are doing that. Why don't we sue over the biblical literacy bill? Why don't we sue over the year of the Bible 2 years in a row? Why don't we sue over $18 million in tax incentives going to Ark Encounter? Why don't we sue over the $3.5 million annually given to religious organizations, religious schools for their busing? The problem is there have been lawsuits before that have set bad precedent, and I'm going to go over some of them. In 2006, the Super Bowl was in Detroit. Detroit decided to spend millions of dollars to make its city look nice. Sounds good. They wound up giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to buildings in certain locations. Amongst those buildings were churches. They gave churches hundreds of thousands of dollars. American Atheists sued. American Atheists wound up losing. Kentucky Homeland Security, I was a plaintiff. American Atheist was also a plaintiff. I'm not going to go into details on the law, but trust me, it was stupid and bad. But we wound up winning at district court, losing at the state appeals court, and then it not being taken any further. The World Trade Center cross case, American Atheists also lost that one. Regarding the $3.5 million that go to religious schools every year in Kentucky, Jefferson County Teachers Association sued. In that case, they lost at the Kentucky Supreme Court level 4-3. Recently, Trinity Presbyterian case, if you've been following that, they got the right to receive $20,000 from the state to improve their playground. The problem isn't that there haven't been people suing. The problem is we're not winning all of them. And guess which state of all 50 is the absolute worst to sue in for church straight violations? Well, it's Kentucky. It is Kentucky. We live in the 6th Circuit. 6th Circuit includes Kentucky, Michigan, Tennessee, and Ohio. It's the most conservative circuit. It's the only one that voted against gay marriage at the appeals court level, that forced the case to go to the Supreme Court. Of those 4 states, Kentucky has the most conservative judges. And the worst thing than not filing a case over a bad law is filing a case and losing. We have to watch the Supreme Court. We have to change the Supreme Court. We have to change the judges in our state. The only way you can really do that is to go to the polls and vote. And with that, I would like to say thanks once again for inviting me to come out here. If you have any questions about what I said, you can feel free to see me at the tent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. We have 2 speakers we're going to bring up next. Shelly Snyder is the co-founder and president of Ohio Valley River Pride, and Ian Powell is in charge of the youth for Ohio Valley. Give them a big round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Tri-State, for having us here today. I'm the proud mother of a transsexual daughter. I am bisexual. I am an LGBTQ activist, and I am a Christian. As I look into the crowd today, I see love and respect, and we can find a connection. Diversity can connect us. My religion taught me to love thy neighbor. My religion taught me to help the needy. My religion taught me to feed the hungry and give shelter to those who need it. The LGBTQ community are the #1 victims of homelessness. They are also the #1 victims of hate crimes. Unemployment rates for white LGBTQ people are 4 times what they are for the general population. And people of color, it's 8 times the number of people of unemployment to the general population. So today, I have one question and I have an apology. My question is for the Ark and Ken Ham. Where in the Bible were you told not to help people? Where in the Bible were you told not to love your neighbor? Where in the Bible were you told not to give jobs to LGBTQ people so that they can feed their families? It's not in my Bible. Jesus loves the outcasts that the rest of the world loves to hate. To my fellow Christian LGBTQ brothers and sisters, God loves you. I love you. But I owe everyone here an apology today. As a Christian, I am sorry for the judgmental and deceptive actions of those who deny rights and equality to so many in the name of my God. They do not represent me. LGBTQ rights are human rights. To my fellow Christians, please quit using your Bible to beat people down and cause them harm. Try opening it up and reading it instead. If I could get you all to say this with me 3 times. Love must win. Love must win. Love must win. Love must win. Thank you very much. Ian?
Thank you so much, Shelly. Shelly is an excellent person, and she does so much in our small community for LGBTQ people. And I guess I'll introduce myself by saying that I am a gay Catholic that is willing to reconcile my faith with science. So I am Ken Ham's worst nightmare. Woo! Hell yes. I want to talk just briefly about hypocrisy. You see, you cannot be a hypocrite in this world and be considered an honorable man. Yikes. Sorry. Ken Ham is not an honorable man. Discriminatory hiring practices are abominable. If we take away somebody's right to a job, no matter who they are, or for whatever reason they're being discriminated against, we take away their right to live and to have a life. How will they feed themselves? How will they procure shelter if they are denied fair employment? it's just not right. And I remember so many simple Sunday school lessons like humility and love and respect, and I carry those with me every day. And I think so many people, so many Christians like Ken Ham have forgotten to keep it simple and to keep it filled with love. Thank you.
I think it took a lot of courage for them two to come up here. And we need to put our differences aside. When we agree on an issue, we need to put the things we don't agree on aside. It reminds me when I rode a bus with a nun to fight the death penalty in Columbus. It was an amazing experience. And that same nun gave David Silverman, President of American Atheists, a big hug when we were fighting for equal rights. These are important things. With our faith or no faith must come together. I'd like to bring up our keynote speaker. He will be our last speaker before we march. We will line up by the tents, 2 by 2 of the same sex, holding hands if you want when we get to the march. Feel free to give a hug, and if you have consent, a kiss if you have consent in front of the Ark here, and we're going to do a big photo op to represent our LGBT community. But please give it up for Hemant Mehta, author, blogger of The Friendly Atheist and How I Sold My Soul on eBay. Hemant Mehta.
You guys have awesome signs. Can you hear me? All right. Listen, it's been 1 year since this Ark opened, which is about 14 seconds in creationist time. So let us congratulate Ken Ham on his 14-second anniversary. And I think it's fair to ask a simple question. Was that worth it? Was it worth it? Because even on Ken Ham's terms, the answer is no. And just look to the acceptance of young earth creationism. A Gallup poll from this past May said that acceptance of evolution without God playing any role in the process is higher today than it's ever been. And people who believe we were created a few thousand years ago, lower than ever before. Now here's the bad news about that. The acceptance of godless evolution is at 19%. Acceptance of young earth creationism is at 38%. So we have a long way to go. But we're moving in the right direction. Was the Ark worth it for the community? No, and that's worth talking about in some detail. Because, look, there are people here, you just heard from Chuck, who can do an incredible job of telling you why the contents of the Ark and everything inside of the Creation Museum are complete nonsense. And I'm glad those voices are speaking out. We need to hear them out, because there is a lot of disturbing material inside. But I thought it would be more useful today to tell you about the problems we've seen outside the Ark. Because Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis have created a lot of problems for people in this community. They've lied, they've broken promises, they've asked for favors and given virtually nothing back in return. If you were dating Ark Encounter, you would have broken up a long time ago. So for example, this park was built here because Grant County sold 98 acres of land to Ark Encounter for a grand total of $1. As Phil mentioned earlier, that's a lot of money on the table that the county did not receive. The city of Williamstown gave Ark Encounter a $62 million interest-free loan and a 75% break in property taxes over the next 30 years. Whatever money would normally be going back into the community is instead going back to Ken Ham to help him pay off his loans here. Every employee who works at Ark Encounter pays a 2% job assessment fee on their gross wages. That means $2 out of every 100 pre-tax dollars they make goes to helping Ken Ham pay off the park instead of back into their pockets and then back into the community. The state of Kentucky, as I know you're all well aware, is giving Ark Encounter a 25% break in sales taxes over the next 10 years, worth over $18 million, or at least up to that. That means 25% of all the taxes they're collecting on tickets, souvenirs, and food will be going back to the Ark, not the state, not the taxpayers of Kentucky, over the next decade. And all of this is happening even as Ken Ham has said multiple times that no money will be taken out of the state budget to fund the Ark. This is money that should be going to the taxpayers of Kentucky. Ark Encounter promised that they would create so many jobs for the people of Grant County in order to get all these perks. What they didn't say when they made that promise was that those jobs would only be available if you agreed to the following things: that the world was created a few thousand years ago, that Adam and Eve were actual, literal, real people, that gay people don't have legitimate marriages, and that being offensive is both sinful and offensive to God. Not only were Jews and atheists and Hindus and Muslims shut out of these jobs, Christians who respect science and have a tolerant heart couldn't get a job there either. Ark Encounter has offered public schools a sweetheart deal to even bring kids to this place. It would cost $1 per student, and adults can get in free. As a former teacher myself, that is tough to pass up. What Ark Encounter won't tell you is that they won't pay for the inevitable lawsuit you will eventually lose if you bring your students to the Christian ministry. And by the way, $1 admission fee is still a $1 too much. And by the way, just in the past few weeks, Ark Encounter has tried to get out of paying a 50-cent per ticket safety fee to the city of Williamstown. And that would go to help the city upgrade its emergency response equipment, because they say they're a religious ministry, so they don't have to pay it. That's approximately $700,000 that the city wouldn't be getting for safety equipment because Ark Encounter can't decide if it's a for-profit Ark or a non-profit ministry. They said they were for-profit when they were getting all these perks. As one internet commenter put it, Ken Ham loves his pork. But let's step outside the Ark too. Has the Ark been good for the local economy? The reason for all these sweet deals was that it was supposed to help the businesses in the area. Has it? No. The hotels are not sold out. You can get a seat in any restaurant you want to go to around here. I mean, it's so bad that Grant County residents recently turned this from a moist town with limited alcohol sales to a wet town where most restaurants could get an alcohol permit. And it still didn't help. Listen, if alcohol doesn't make this place more appealing, nothing will. And let me quote for you Steve Wood, a Grant County judge executive who is also a Republican. He said, quote, "I was one of those believers that once the Ark was here, everything was going to come in, but it's not done it. It's not done it. I think the Ark's done well, and I'm glad for them on that, but it's not done us any good at all." And why haven't things gotten better? In part, it's because Answers in Genesis has overpromised and underdelivered with attendance. In 2014, Ken Ham said Ark Encounter would bring in 2 million visitors a year. Last month, he said it'd be closer to 1.1 million. It's a bit of a drop there. Look, I know Answers in Genesis and Ark Encounter and Ken Ham. I know they have a habit of taking numbers and then lowering them beyond belief. But it's just sad when you spend about $100 million and you can barely crack 1 million people. And you would think, you know, the first year for an attraction like this would be incredible. Think about all the press they've received, locally, nationally, internationally. Think about all the people who heard about this Ark for years who have now had a full year to see it for themselves. Why would next year be better, as Ham likes to put it? The diehards have already seen it. We've seen their buses going already. We've already mocked it. The press has nothing new to write about. The exhibits aren't changing because creationism doesn't improve. The information is just plain wrong. The cost to get in is obscenely high. It's $136 for a family of 4, and that's without tax and without the parking money. And this isn't the sort of museum where you learn more on repeat visits. Listen, Ken Ham is the Joe Camel of creationism. He wants to lure in kids and get them hooked on his brand of BS. He sells all sorts of products designed to mess with your mind. He ignores the evidence he doesn't like. He's bad for you, and we need to tell people to quit the habit. To quote the liberal redneck, Trey Crowder, they didn't need to waste $100 million on this Ark, because for $100, I'll take you to a cow pasture, you can smell the BS, and we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for being here, and let's go march.
We're going to line up by the tents. Make sure you grab a Planned Parenthood sign, American Atheist sign, or any organization you support. We're going to march 2 by 2.